Good Sunday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Capital Discourse. I am your host, Dakota Jones, and I am joined here today with my esteemed colleagues, Jess Wyatt and TJ Fields. Welcome to the show, guys. We have a lot to talk about today. It has been quite a busy week here in Washington and also around the country and the world. Today, we're going to be kind of getting into Obergefell versus Hodges. In the push for the repeal of gay. Well, let's try that again, guys. Welcome, everybody, to Capital Discourse. I'm your host, Dakota Jones, here with my esteemed colleagues, Jess Wyatt and TJ Fields. We're going to be getting into quite a bit today. First, we're going to be talking about Obergefell versus Hodges, the push for the Republicans trying to take away protections of gay marriage, as well as protections in the Defense of Marriage Act. We're also going to be getting into the DC takeover with Muriel Bowser, the mayor of DC, and Donald Trump in the push back, as well as some of the discourse that has been taking place between the two. We're going to be getting into the immigration raids as they seem to intensify not only here in the DC area, but also all over the country. We're going to also talk a little bit about Russia and Trump and the summit that they just held in Alaska. And then we're also going to kind of get into homelessness within the country and how this is truly affecting a lot of all of these pieces that are going on within the nation. So stand by, and we're going to really kind of dive into these things. So, guys, we're really kind of going to really dive into this a lot today here. We're really going to go right into this whole DC takeover. I mean, really, it's unfathomable to me to see military troops walking the city of Washington, D.C., the beacon of freedom and the lighting. It's supposed to be a shining star of just equality and freedom and happiness. And right now, it doesn't feel that way here in the D.C. area. And quite honestly, it's just frightening. And I've noticed online there's a lot of interactions that are out there. We've got a lot of protests that are happening. We've got a lot of police getting into areas in which they normally don't really kind of go. And then we see them a lot in areas where we do see them go a lot. But we're also seeing that with the federal agents. And we've seen like an interaction on the first night of the takeover where there was some DEA agents. I believe they were DEA agents. They were walking then on a patrol, and they came up on a group of individuals who were sitting outside at night, and I believe one of them was having a cigarette, and began to question them. And so, like, really, the concern here is, is this the direction that we're heading? And what happens next? And I know that we have that video of the interaction itself. Play that for you.
You got your ID on you, Chip?
No, I live right here.
Okay, cool.
There's a cigarette. Did y'all get a call or something about right here?
No, so we're doing checks to keep everybody safe down here, right? Have you heard of the federal search that Donald Trump's putting out?
No.
Right. You don't follow like Code 3, anything like that people are putting up? All right, so yeah, Trump's got all federal agencies kind of coming together for 7 days and going out, trying to stop the violent crime, all kinds of stuff. So we're out here contacting people, talking to them, right? Quality of life offenses, smoking, drinking in public, right? Can't happen outside, right? Most people know that. So we're contacting people, trying to advise them of the law so they learn, right? And then if there's other stuff going on where it turns into there's multiple agencies or somebody, there's shooting and things like that. There's extra hands as well, right? So we're just out here trying to inform people and educate people. It's not like we're trying to just go grab people and ruin someone's life over a joint or something like that, all right?
I only asked because when you walked up, at the moment you walked up, you only had eggs.
Yeah, well, it smelled like the odor of marijuana, burnt marijuana in the air, right? And you're the only guy that had something lit in your hand, and I didn't flash like you, so I didn't realize it was just a cigarette. So that's on me. I appreciate you understanding and not getting shit with me. All right, so just know, right? Learn, teach, tell your boys, like, yo, everybody's out, from FBI to park police. Right? So do your thing. Let them know. Don't be smoking outside. Don't be drinking outside. Because Donald Trump is tired of people coming to visit.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know smoking in public?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the rest of
Because they're learning this recreational use, so I didn't know.
Yeah, so DC, it's recreational use as well, right? But you can legally possess up to 2 ounces. You can gift an ounce to your boy, right? So if you had 2 ounces and he said he needed a zip, you can give him a zip, but you can't smoke outside.
That's just insane to me. I mean, really, that's just truly a lot. We reached out to these guys to really kind of see and get their take on all of it, and they declined to comment, but they did state that this is happens a lot, and it's only increasing for them. So, and I just feel as though that's just. It's just too much. But let me get your guys' take here, TJ, Jess. Tell me what your take on this is. I know, TJ, you're truly affected by this. You're kind of in the center.
Yeah, you're right. I am in the center of all this. I am here in Washington, D.C., and I do feel very affected by this because it does feel like we're kind of in that stop and frisk era again of the 1970s where, the cops would just walk up and stop and frisk a African-American male. I mean, I hate to see it happen now, but I definitely appreciate this video because you did learn something from it. But at the same time, you kind of felt the gravity of the situation. Like, you have countless amount of officers that walk up to your residence and are just asking for your ID automatically. It's not like telling you that you've committed a crime or anything. They're just simply, asking for your ID, kind of what they like to say here is pressing you, and pretty much they're just here for an intimidation factor, and it's not good. It's not looking good, and I think from here it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, we'll take your opinion in on this too, but I definitely agree with you, TJ. It's an unreal moment that we live in, honestly, and I've struggled kind of dealing with how I was going to approach this on air this week, just because I want to make sure that I come out fair and balanced. But man, I'm just mad as hell, honestly. Like, it's just stupid. It's stupid. But I mean, Jess, I mean, you I'm sure you've got a different take. You want to pop in there?
Yeah, thanks. I honestly, watching the video, it felt intimidating to me. What do you mean tell your boys, spread the word, it's an arrestable offense? They were saying all the right things. His demeanor was relaxed and calm, but what was he trying to imply when he said, I'm not doing whatever? It's very much, I agree with TJ, it very much is reminiscent of the stop and frisk era, and the fact like you can't smoke outside, you can't do something that is recreationally legal on your own property, outside of your own property. It is a demonstration of power and control. It is an intimidation factor, and it's an abuse of power, in my opinion. I understand you want to come out fair and balanced, but I think that you have every right to be mad as hell.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And you know what? At the end of the day, too, and let's be very clear. Marijuana is recreationally legal, but they weren't even smoking marijuana. I think the guy had a cigarette. And, if you're going to sit outside and have a cigarette, because nobody wants to smoke indoors. I mean, that's horrible inside. It's horrible for everybody inside. It's horrible for the walls. So if you're going to go outside and have a cigarette at night, That's his prerogative. And it's also, expected that you would not be harassed in that moment, that you would not be bothered in that moment. You're not doing anything to anyone else. You're not making a scene. You're not making you're not being loud. So why are you coming up on his porch? That's just, to me, is just completely and totally uncalled for. But we're in a world right now where the opposition and a large contingent of individuals believe that crime is at a point of which is unbearable, and I think all crime is unbearable. And let me make sure that I'm very, very clear on that. All crime is unbearable and should not happen. However, I think that we need to call it for what it is. I think that we need to really, truly sit down and look at what we're calling these things. The narrative all week has been that the crime rate in Washington, D.C., the crime rate inside of these major cities is through the roof. But that's the key word that I think that everybody needs to understand, is that they're using the word crime rate. They're not using crime. They're not using the total amount. They're saying crime rate. That crime rate is out of control. These cities are dangerous. They're worse than Bogota. But we're looking at a rate, and we're balancing that off of a population amount that is favorable to whomever is doing the actual crime rate. So you can make that seem so much worse, or you can give true values. And that's why the crime rate is there. If we look at the total numbers within Washington, D.C. this year, we're looking, I believe, we have, there it is. There's that graphic. So if you could look at the crime statistics here inside of DC, you see that there are the areas within a city in where crime can go up. And this happens in every city. This happens in any town. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be in the country as well. There's always a couple of areas where there are a larger amount of people, where there's more crime. More people equals more crime. That's unavoidable. However, I believe we're sitting somewhere around 91, 92 homicides this year, because they're saying the homicide rate is unfathomable. And you know what? 92, 91, or whatever that number is over 1 is unacceptable. However, I think truly and honestly, we need to look at what is actually happening here. This is not an attempt to make people's lives safer. They wouldn't be going through and talking to people sitting on porches if they were. This is an attempt to really and truly enforce the will upon people who live in an area, quite honestly, and make them afraid to live, and push them out of an area because somebody else wants it. I believe there is a person who is also actually inside of the White House at a press conference, one of the briefings this week too. And then I'll want you guys too to kind of hop in on this. But after this guy says he's lived here for 17 years and said that he's experienced so much crime. He's experienced so much adversity and seen so many homicides in front of his home. And then also had his home burned down. I got a clip of that actually somewhere, where this guy literally is just howling about how bad it is. We can play that really fast there. So these guys.
Who is our podcast host today, Benny Johnson. Benny, why don't you kick us off, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. As a DC resident of 15 years, I lived on Capitol Hill. I witnessed so many muggings and so much theft. I lost track. I was carjacked. I have murders on my Ring camera and mass shootings. I witnessed a woman on my block get held up at gunpoint for $20, and my house was set ablaze.
And his house was set ablaze. It's set ablaze. And you know what? That sucks. And if all of that is true, like, I feel bad. But why the hell are you still there? Why didn't you move? I mean, really? Why the hell are you still there?
Yeah, don't you go house scouting before you buy your home? And you check out the neighborhood at night and in the morning. Like, I think that's what you do when you go house hunting. So you bought this home in the worst neighborhood, it sounds like, and you chose that. You chose that lifestyle. So how is it all of DC's fault when you chose this house and you made the decision to buy that Ring camera for your front porch and sit out there and count the homicides?
Bruh, seriously though, like, let's be real. I went to church in an area in DC where is infamously known as Berry Farms, and quite honestly, and they don't use the word Berry Farm; it's Bury Farms, by the way. And quite honestly, I've never heard of that level of crime in that area. So I don't know. I'm having a hard time believing it, but again, I haven't seen any court documents or anything like that to prove that it's true, but here we are, and this guy has got the largest room in the largest pulpit to sing the story and in the world, and to state that something is completely horrible, and it is truly not. But I don't know. You tell me. Like, I mean, wouldn't you move, Jess?
So I think that the moving thing is a little difficult. I know, just in general, the narrative, if you don't like it, just leave, isn't always feasible. And I think that also speaks to some of the poverty levels and things that we're going to talk about later. But really, what I think that is the important part to focus on is what you said earlier about fear. They're using fear to control people, because fear is incredibly motivating. Fear is incredibly pervasive. It's deep. It spreads quickly. And if you don't fully understand what's going on, I mean, they're using numbers that are very confusing. They're using a crime rate instead of the actual crime numbers. The rate would be relevant to the population size, not to the actual number of homicides and things like that. They're intentionally creating confusing information, providing it, spreading it as far and wide as they can to intimidate and to cause fear. And when people are afraid, they don't think clearly and they make choices to protect themselves. And what I think we're seeing is also likely an exaggeration. I mean, yeah, you check out the neighborhood, you know what you're getting into, but also, I mean, you were witness. Congratulations. Did you mind your business? Like, are you sticking your nose in it? Like, are you causing problems? Are you instigating? I think that a lot of these stories and a lot of these issues are also because people stir the pot, because they want a reaction, because they want something out of it. And that's what we're seeing happen here.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. We see it all the time. People are just hopping into things. And TJ, I know you've heard this before, but don't start none, won't be none. I mean, really, this is where it comes down to. It's crazy to me. And I know that DC it's easy for them to pull this off. It's absolutely easy for them to pull this off in DC because DC is not a state. So it does not have those protections. DC lives under what they call home rule. And they're able to self-govern, but they have to do so at the will of the federal government, and everything they do has to be approved. And so they really have no protections that most other people in the country would have, because they don't have a state. And, they don't have a representation. It's famously known, taxation without representation. DC pays taxes. The residents of DC pay taxes like every other person, except they don't have the equal representation that they're due to deserve. They're already disadvantaged out the group. And as a native Washingtonian, I know this. I've seen it. But let me make one thing extremely clear, and it is this: that this is going to be replicated over and over again in inner cities throughout this country. If you think they are not coming, you are incorrect. They are finding a way in every which way. Look at LA. Now it's DC. Next it'll be Philly. It'll be Chicago. They're throwing the cities out there. They're telling you they're coming. They're going to start in the federal buildings and they're going to work their way out. And they are going to use whatever tactic they choose to use. And quite honestly, this is the point where everybody, all generations, need to stand up, not just older folks, all generations, younger, older. Everybody needs to stand up and say something in the capacity that they can. We're in a situation right now, at a boiling point in this country, where silence is not optional. The other side is not being silent, and quite honestly, we need to not be silent as well. And I'm sure TJ and Jess, you guys agree with that on multiple levels. We need to be speaking and talking and engaging in the conversation. We need to be a part of the solution, whether that's at the ballot box, whether you're going to run for office, whether you're going to involve yourself in the community. We all need to be a part of that solution. We can't just sit on the sides anymore.
I have I guess a look at this that most people won't look at it this way, but it's a funny look, but it's probably not too funny. I always think of, we're living in the Hunger Games right now. Pre President Snow right now. We have a President Snow in office that is willing to take it there, to take it to the Hunger Games style of warfare, or the lifestyle where we're going to have our different, wards or districts that are all under his governing. And the army is going to be ICE, and the army is going to be the National Guard that they already have in the states. So, I mean, like you said, yeah, it is right now the time for us to step up and speak before we need our mockingbird later on in life. I mean, I don't want to get to that point where I'm 60 and, have to fight for my life every day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I already have to fight for my life every day, but it's going to be harder when there's no control over my real life.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and at the same time, too, bro, like, seriously, though, the head game maker is the vice president. So, and that's kind of where we're at right now. We live in this, like, very charged, very hostile environment. I mean, the guy that stated that there was so much crime in an earlier podcast was the same person who said that there's an infestation in DC, an infestation, and it needs to be cleaned. I mean, like, let's really call it for what it is. He called it an infestation. And I know we don't have that clip, but we can post that in a short later. He called it an infestation that needs to be cleaned. And I don't think that there is any human population that's an infestation. And to call it such it's just cold. And it's just wrong. But who am I to say? I don't know. But I think it's cold. I don't know. What do you think, Jess? I mean,
infestation. Yeah, it's very charged language, and all of this is very intentional. The media knows what they're doing. The lawmakers know what they're doing. the governing folks. They know exactly what they're doing. And if you think you don't, like you said before, you are incorrect. These are people who make a career out of this, who understand language, recognize patterns, and they're using that against us. Now, TJ, you said something about comparing this to the Hunger Games, and I know you're not the first person and you're not the only person doing this. And in a way, I mean, it's horrible, but in a way, it almost gives me a modicum of hope, because we were trained for this. My entire adolescence was full of dystopia after dystopia after dystopia, put on the films, put on the books, you name it, we saw it. And what you saw every single time is when the oppressed group, so in this sense, it is what it is. It's impoverished. It's folks living in urban areas. It is there are racial differences. But in every one of these examples, you see the group banding together, creating their community, and protesting. And in the US, it's been shown if 3% of the population bands together to protest against something or dissent against something, it's effective. We saw that with the No Kings marches a few months ago. We had a proof of concept. We know it can work. DC, I've seen, is already doing their own version of protests. I saw something about the sound protest with people banging on pots and pans for 3 minutes at 8 o'clock. That is easy, that is sustainable, and it can be fun. You can involve your kids in that. You can do anything you need to. And not everybody there's no one person that needs to do a lot, but everybody needs to do something. And that is the way to make this effective. And we have folks who have different ability levels, different financial levels, different time levels, different attention levels to be able to offer different things. You don't need to offer the same thing your neighbor does. You just need to offer what you can. And when folks can understand that your input is valuable because it all adds up to something, that's when we're going to start to see a shift in this. But we will not see that shift until we take a deep breath, let go of some of that fear, and start listening to our neighbors and creating that community that they're trying so hard to destroy.
Absolutely. I agree. And, it kind of brings us into, kind of where we're going to kind of segue into next after the break. But, one of the things in the press conference that was stated, Donald Trump said that, one of the things we're going to do to make DC safer is we're going to get rid of the homeless encampments. And we're going to relocate them. There are a lot of things with that statement that bother me. One, obviously, where were you before? That comes up first and foremost. Next is truly, where are you taking them to? Where are they? You can clear them out, but I'm fully aware that the apparatuses that exist within the city are not truly enough to take care of the population that exists as a whole. So where are you taking them to? Because these guys have committed no crime, and to say that all of them have committed crimes in the past is a brush that you're painting too broad. And to say that they are not in deserve and of need of resources is unhuman. And so, truly, where are you taking them to? But we're going to dive into that and a couple of other pieces when we come back from break. Hey guys, welcome back to Capital Discourse. I'm here with you guys and my co-host below. So we were talking before the break. We were talking about what DC is doing and this takeover and what they're going to do with the homeless population. And how they're removing the encampments. And really, my question, like I said before the break, is where are they going? Where are they putting these humans? What facilities have you created, or what apparatuses are you placing them in? It is not fair to just pick up a group of individuals and throw them into centers because they are unable to. That's not how this works. You can't force an individual to be indoors without committing a crime. You can't force an individual to do something, as this is a country that is supposed to be free. So the real question is, what is the plan and what's next? And I know that this is not just an inner city problem. This is a country problem. This is a generational issue, both in the country, in inner cities, and throughout the U.S. And quite honestly, we really need to kind of address that. I know that everybody, TJ and Jess both have their own opinions on what generation. I know that Jess, you have a really strong approach on generational poverty, a generational approach of issues. Interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, I think that something that is not widely discussed is generational trauma, generational poverty at all. It's all tied to something called epigenetics, and that is the concept that your body stores trauma at a cellular level. And so the trauma I experienced while I was pregnant, before I had my children, that is passed down on a cellular level. And so, like, not only are we passing down storytelling, but from a biological perspective, this is stuff. There are traumatic responses. There are all sorts of different impacts that occur because of what I experienced. And when you think about it, we're only a few generations removed from some other very atrocious activities that our country participated in. And to think that all of that's just going to go away because we stopped talking about it is absurd. The collecting of homeless people and unhoused folks, it reminds me of just, oh, well, it wasn't a problem until they complained about it. If we can't see it, it doesn't exist. That's, again, not how this works. What you said is also a good point about where are they putting them? What shelters have enough space to take all of these people? Part of the reason some of these people are not in the shelters is because the shelters can't house them in the first place, or they're not willing to, or there are other things at play. Not everybody is going to be a fit for a shelter, and that's why we see people out of them. If that was the solution, it would have worked by now. We need something better, not to double down on what's not working.
Absolutely, and I agree. Here, what it really is. Let's call it spade for spade. We've got a very strong economy. We've got individuals with an immense amount of wealth. There are a couple of things in this world I don't think that anybody should have to do without, and one of those things is housing, and food, and water. Are three things that no person should be denied the ability to get. And the fact that people are continuously denied that ability, people are continuously, shuffled out of the way and continue to not be able to take that next step towards their own self-betterment. It's wrong. It's wrong. And it's not right. And at the end of the day, we see this not only just in inner cities, we see this in all over the place. We see this in the country, we see this in the middle of the country, we see this in the cities out there. This is not just an impoverished inner city type of thing. This is a universal issue. And until we start to have deeper conversations on how we're going to fix it, it's only going to get worse. And quite honestly, even the richest man is one bad day away from being that same guy on the corner. But TJ, I'm sure that you've got your take on that as well.
I mean, yeah, I remember when I was younger, we all had to say the Pledge of Allegiance in school. And in the beginning of the Pledge of Allegiance, it says, with liberty and justice for all. And we are not living up to that. Even though the Trump administration has now forced that the Pledge of Allegiance is reinstated back in school and they must say it every morning, we're not living up to that. We are not giving liberty to everyone. I mean, the definition of the liberty itself says it's the state of being free within the society of oppressive restriction that's imposed by authority on one's life, behavior, or political views. I think when you're homeless, you're not really worried about your political views. You're more worried about, getting by,
but
making sure your next meal is fed.
Oh yeah, but let's also be clear that the Pledge of Allegiance, and these are the things that drives me crazy with this administration, is that it's continuously stated that things are happening that are not actually happening. The Pledge of Allegiance never went away. Schools all over the country have always said the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. And I have taught grade school to know that to be true before Donald Trump and after Donald Trump, and will be after Donald Trump again. And so, quite honestly, and that's the thing that drives me insane, is that we live in this world now where if an individual says that this is the case, then that is the case, and everyone's buying it, and it goes back to this generational belief that we're going to listen to and I'm just going to say it, the Republican Party. One thing that I can say for sure about being a Democrat and in the Democratic Party is that we've learned to not believe half the crap, and everybody else have learned not to believe half the crap. That's why they keep losing. And where they're going to step up, I yet to see, and how they're going to rectify all of this, we've yet to see. But one thing that I know about the Republican Party, and I've seen over the years, is that they've sold this line of crap to its core base, and they believe it. And they're sitting there right now believing all of the things that are happening. They're saying that DC and all these other cities are horrible and unsafe, and you shouldn't go there because it's not safe. But we're going to make it safe again. We're going to make it safe again. But in reality, the same issues that you see in DC are the same issues that you see in these communities and towns and where they live. So really, the question is, that this is a thing, and really, why is this continuously a thing? I don't know, Jess, you want to kind of hop in on that? I know that the education. I know you and I have talked at length on the disparity of how folks that, especially out in the country, there are people that I know that have not left their county or their town, nonetheless been to an inner city, and they're too afraid to. Is this fear game that works both ways? Let's scare the inner city population into submission, and let's scare the rural population into belief that everything is not safe. And at the end of the day, I think it's just to kind of keep the same approach of let's get them to continue to do the 9-to-5 crap. But I mean, you want to hop in on that one? I could go on for a hop.
I mean, absolutely. So a couple things. One, it's an abuse tactic. It's a power and control tactic. Isolation is one of the most effective forms of control, because when you don't have anybody else to compare it to, you don't know better and you can't learn better. And keeping people uneducated and confused is one of the easiest ways to manipulate them and control them. Again, you're seeing fear as a theme through this. If if the city folk and the country folk had a conversation, we might realize that y'all aren't so bad on either side. But nobody's doing that because we're too afraid. The people in the city are too afraid to misstep and have an enormous abuse of power rained down upon them. And the country folk are being told that these city folk are horrible and they're not going there. And I mean, I've lived in kind of like the in-between in suburbia. So I'm a couple minutes away from a city, and I am also a couple minutes away from farm. I worked on a farm when I was in high school and college, but I also drive Uber in the middle of Philadelphia. So I have been able to see it all. And from my own personal experience, people just don't know, and they don't even know what they're afraid of. I have so many conversations with a lot of my passengers too, just saying, oh, well, there's so much crime and this, that, and the other thing. And you know what happens, but they never tell me what happens. They don't actually know. And it is intentional. And I mean, also Dakota, you're a psychology guy, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we're not eating, if we're not drinking water, if we don't have shelter or clothing, you're not meeting your physiological needs. You're never going to be able to move up into that safety and security level. If you don't have safety and security, your health, employment, property, any of that, you're never going to feel the love and belonging. And that really, the community is where we find our power. And if you don't have your community, you don't have a power, you're never going to have the confidence. You're never going to have achievement or respect yourself or respect from others. Right. And like it all builds. And so they're defunding these programs, they're taking things away, they're rounding up the unhoused, they're blaming the victims, and they're creating this narrative that the symptom is actually the problem instead of addressing the root cause, because they don't want to take accountability.
Well,
they don't want to look bad.
Absolutely. And that's a common that we see. That's a common. We're going to go ahead and treat the symptoms and not the problem. And not the cause. We've done that too often in this country. We continuously treat the symptoms, and we treat the symptoms as harshly as we should be treating the problem. And that's where we go wrong. And we're seeing it now with the tariffs. We're seeing it now with the economy, where folks are seeing higher prices. We're seeing farms out in the middle of the country who have nowhere to sell their grain, because we've stopped going ahead and giving funds to the USO. So we're sending the USA. And so the grain is sitting there, and you've got third and fourth generation farms that are just sitting there going under because we're continuously treating the symptoms and not the problem. And we're not getting to the root problem. And we have a lot of things that we can be doing, but we're just not doing them. And quite honestly, it kind of brings us into the next thing we're talking about here is kind of, we're going to hop into talking about the same-sex protections. Obergefell versus Hodges is one of the next of the many of things that this party and this administration is really kind of put on their chopping block and their push. And we kind of saw this when it came to DC, when we were dealing with the LA issues, and they were dealing with all of the Epstein stuff, and they were making little rumblings and saying, we're going to do this. And that was the next thing on the thing. So we know that it's coming up. We know that they're going to try to end marriage protection. And so, like, I want to be absolutely clear on what we have going on here is, Obergefell versus Hodges is the federal protection of stating that, yes, we recognize gay marriage. Now, there was an act that was passed by Congress called the Respect of Marriage Act. And this gave this was an all but approach. And so essentially they were saying, we're going to respect marriage, and we'll give you just about everything up until the point, so that it's still left with certain protections, not there. And for everybody to understand, one of those things is making sure that healthcare is adequately met within a couple. If you're in a household and you have a job and you want to cover your significant other, you want to cover your spouse, that healthcare can no longer be achieved when it comes to medical care. the protections that were there before are no longer there and in place. So if a person gets sick, they're not able to really and truly be able to deal and or make suggestions inside of their spouse's care, because quite honestly, we've pretty much said no. You can't, because you are not protected and your marriage is not recognized. And for a party that is deeply rooted in religion, we are deeply into marriage, which is supposed to be a covenant. And so therefore, my approach, honestly, is the government doesn't belong in marriage in general. That's between you, your partner, and God and your pastor. It is not a part of the United States government or any government really to truly dictate how this is going to be and or go. But it's a cash grab. And that's what it really comes down to. It's a cash grab. And really, and I know that y'all are, as soon as I said cash grab, are like ready to hop in on that, but it's a cash grab. It's really what it is. It's let's go ahead and make as much money as we can on the sanctity of marriage. And let's go ahead and say, oh, well, if you do this, that, and the other thing, and you pay us this amount of money, you can have this, that, and the other thing. It's all it comes down to is how much money these people are giving, and where it comes down. That's really and truly like it's all money. The government doesn't belong in marriage, and they know they don't belong in marriage, but they can make money. I know you guys want to hop in there, so go ahead.
I want to say to people that are out there listening and tuning in with us, I mean, if you guys think this doesn't affect you, really take a look at history once again. And I hate reflecting on the 70s once again, because I know it was such a wonderful time, but the only thing I can think about is the Love versus Virginia case, where they were trying to ban interracial marriages. I mean, this pretty much is reminiscent of that exactly. And it pisses me off, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Loving versus Virginia is another one that they've already made comments about that one too. Loving versus Virginia. They said, hey, listen, and which is really striking, as it was started by Clarence Thomas, and that would directly affect him. But it was started by Clarence Thomas, a man who is in a mixed marriage himself, but yet he is talking about Loving versus Virginia, and he's talking about removing and rolling back these protections. But it's probably just because it doesn't affect him too much, because he's older. I got to be here for a little bit longer. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. But I don't know, Jesse, what's your take?
My take is, can we talk about term limits next time? But before all of that, no, I think we have seen the Supreme Court. They only review a certain number of cases a year. So understand that it's possible they might be unwilling to review or reconsider their ruling. However, we've also seen this same Supreme Court pass things like the heartbeat bill and roll back progress that we have made with other very significant landmark cases. I mean, if they've done it before, who's to say? They're telling us, people are telling us that they want this to happen. People are saying that they're going to do it, or they're pushing for it. They're going to make sure it can happen. And I think that it is naive to believe that they're not intending to follow through. I think it's naive to believe that they're going to stop there. When the reconsideration of Roe v. Wade happened a few years ago, that nobody saw coming.
Oh, but I mean, but they saw it coming. That's the thing. They say they didn't see it coming. They saw that coming. Right. Let's be real.
Well, I had said to you, I'm sorry, but I had said to you earlier, like, the only way that you didn't see what's happening now coming is if you weren't paying attention or you were in denial, because they're telling us the writing is on the wall. History repeats itself. You just have to pay attention.
I mean, the writing's not just on the wall. They're literally going in front of the camera and going, hey, we're going to go ahead and work on taking this away. We're going to look at, ending this. Like, they're telling you exactly what they're going to do. They literally said, hey, we're going to probably take away most of your rights. So you're good with that, right? And the problem is, and through this generational approach, we've seemed to sit here and take it. And that goes back to, as we come to the end of this episode today, I want to make sure that, this is that moment in time, that moment where we need to ensure that everyone everywhere is involved in the process. They need to be involved in the approach of how we as a people are going to move forward. We need to be involved in the process of elections. We need to be there for the primaries. We need to be there and involved, not just talking about it on TikTok. We need to be there. And that goes for the younger generation. They've sat at home for too long. Everybody sits at home on these primaries too long. This is how we get rid of the knuckleheads, is the primaries, not the general. The general is what's left. Everybody gets mad about the general election. The general is what's left. Stop being mad about the general election results when you can change the primary. You guys are living in worlds and towns and areas where you've got 20,000 people, where your vote actually counts and speaks volumes. You get to help dictate that, but you've got to do it through the primaries. You've got to be involved. You've got to be there. You got to get up and vote. When you know it's election day every November, take your cell phone down to the election polls. School board, all the way up to the counselors, to the superintendents, to the budgets of your local towns. Take yourselves to the polls. If you don't, you're going to wind up in a situation where you're sitting there mad at the call at the general election when you could have stopped it at the primary. You see all of these Republicans that are coming out of the woodwork now going, I didn't want this. I didn't want this. But these are the same Republicans that didn't go to the primaries and vote for something else that they could have voted for. No one's saying you got to go vote for a Democrat. No one's saying that. You can vote for a Republican all the live long day. Just go vote for one that's actually going to be there for you, not the one that's just going to screw you over. And with that, that's my final thought. But Jess, you want to give your final thought of the day?
I would say that the most important thing to remember is that when you're hearing all of these things, it's intended to overwhelm us. It's information overload. It's usually a distraction from a bigger thing that's going on. And that is done intentionally. They're trying to manipulate, they're trying to control to get their agenda completed. And I mean, I want what I want done. I don't think that inherently wanting what I don't think that there is an inherent anything wrong with wanting to progress what you need. However, the way they're going about it, the manipulation, the power, the control is not okay. And the most effective way to make change, like you said, is voting, gathering, protesting together. Everyone needs to do something. And until more people start to stand up, speak out, demonstrate, be the example, we're not going to see we're not going to see what I think needs to happen. And right now it was important to do yesterday, 2 years ago, 4 years ago. We're in the thick of it. The train is heading, the train left the station, and we need to do everything we can to stop it.
Absolutely. And it really comes down to it. And TJ, do you want to throw your piece in there too? Your final thought of the day?
Mine is very repetitive of yours. I think with this last election, I saw in the African American community, a lot of people say they weren't going to vote because, they didn't see either side benefiting them. But I think they're seeing the effects of that. And I think that we do need to go out and vote. Even if you don't have a decision, you know that there's a better decision than the other, and make that choice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And quite honestly, the involvement in the primaries, being out there, being out there supporting the candidate you like during that time period, helping them get over that hump is key. Because then you get the candidate that you want and you deserve, not the candidate you're stuck with. Being involved in the process and not just crying at the home plate when the foul is called incorrectly, is where it's going to matter the most. And I think that everybody truly, if you're not involved and you're not registered now, go do it now. Go register. Most states allow you to start that process online. Start it. Go to the library, pick up the voter registration, do it there, and submit it. You could do all of those things, but you must be involved in the process. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And with that, we come to the end of today's episode of Capital Discourse. We'll be back here every Sunday, and we'll be bringing you all of the issues and hot button topics of the week. We're going to be as candid and open and fair along the way, and try to bring you the best information we can possibly get you. And so that with that, I wish you guys a great Sunday and have a successful week. We'll see you next week.